الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the subject of what is specifically related to women in Islam, and one of these things is being a mother and the importance of this, and that, as you know, that each and every one of us, we assume certain roles in our life, and every role that we are upon, there are rules and regulations, wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to govern that in our life. Meaning, if a person is a father or is a mother or a son or a daughter or a wife or a husband or a brother or someone working for someone or a student and a teacher, you know, any relationship in any situation, there are always guidelines for us to follow. And understanding that from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, this is deen. And we are commanded to submit ourselves and to be in that state of submission to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the subjects in the deen of Islam that you would have so many narrations and so many evidences when it comes to bir al-walidain, and the righteousness towards the parents, especially the mother. And the ayat of the Quran are very clear, comes right after the command from Allah to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Worship Allah and do not associate partners with Him. And وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and be kind to the parents. And al-ihsan, or the goodness that is to be observed, as Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he said in the tafsir of the ayah, he says, يُرِيدُ الْبِرْ بِهِمَا مَعَ اللُّطْفِ, that a person would want all kinds of righteousness and goodness with one's parents, with gentleness, with softness. He does not respond to them in any harsh way. He does not stare at them in a way that as if a person is angry or so. With no raising the voice over their voice, but rather, as he says, بل يكون بين يديهما مثل العبد بين يدي السيد تذللا لهما. That's Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, but rather to be in front of them, with them, meaning the parents, like a slave with his master, in such a humbleness and goodness that a person would have towards them. And this is part of exalting the commands of Allah. It's not because of cultures or because this is how things should be, but this is because the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِنْدَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. Do not say uff to them, say what's pleasant for them. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمِ, that you have this humbleness towards them. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا, and say, my Lord, have mercy upon them as they raised me when I was young. So therefore, this refers to the smallest and the smallest harm, the biggest harm. It doesn't matter. This is something that, as we all know, and it's consensus among the people of knowledge of how to be kind to the parents. And as one of the early generations of Islam, he asked Sa'id ibn Musayyab from the Tabi'een, rahimahullah, he said to him, كل ما في القرآن من بر الوالدين قد عرفته. All of what's mentioned in the Quran from the kindness towards the parents, I know it, except, meaning the tafsir of it, to apply it in one's life, except what is the application basically of saying وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا, and say to them a word of goodness, gentleness. So he said, what is this al-qawlul kareem? What is the speech that is I'm supposed to say to them that is kareem and generous and kind? So Ibn Musayyib, he said to him, قَوْلُ الْعَبْدِ الْمُذْنِبِ لِلسَّيِّدِ الْفَضِّ الْغَلِيظِ, the statement or the speech of a sinful slave to his harsh master. How the master, when he's angry and a slave is speaking to him, this is how you should speak, or to say the kind and the goodness in speech to the parents. So this is well known in our deen, and that's why it shows the importance of raising our children, not to humiliate them, of course, this is a very obvious thing, but to raise the children in a way for them to be obedient to their parents and to respect their parents and to show the importance of being a mother. Being in that position as a mother, this is something that, as we see the ayat of the Quran, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, something that a person, if a woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed her favor, his favor upon her to be a mother, this is a great ni'mah from Allah. So it shows that this is the objectives, to be mothers, not to be a career here or there, going outside and doing things, which is, even if it's permissible, but what's the most important thing, what's the most virtuous act to be upon, if we're really concerned about the hereafter and want to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is for a woman to be a mother, because of the many different hadith and many different, whether it's Quran or hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that talks about the honor of the mother from her children in this life and the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the Prophet ﷺ, the man came to him and he said, Ya Rasulullah, Man ahaqqu nasi bihusni sahabati, who among the people has the right for my companionship? He said, Ummuk, your mother. Qala thumma man, then who? Qal ummuk. Qala thumma man, qal ummuk. 3 times. When he asked him, then who after that? Who after that? 3 times the mother, and then the 4th time he said, Abuk. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Inna Allah yusikum bi ummahatikum, thumma yusikum bi ummahatikum, thumma yusikum bi abaikum, thumma yusikum bil aqrab fil aqrab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yusikum, commanding you to be upon what he wants from you. Al-wasiyya is the bequest, is the strong admonition and advice and importance towards your mother, towards your mothers 7 times, a 2nd time, and then to your fathers, and then yusikum fil aqrab bil aqrab fil aqrab, then the one that is near, the one that is near. So, and this is one of the best of actions, as-salatu ala waqtiha thumma birrul walidayn. The hadith are so many with regards to being kind to the parents, and especially the mothers. And as the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned the parents, and he said, Inna Allah harram alaykum uquq al-ummahat wa man anuhat, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid for you uquq al-ummahat, to be disobedient and not kind to the mothers, even though it's for the mothers and the fathers, but he mentioned the mothers first, and specifically about the mothers, because the right of the mother towards a child is higher than the right of the father, and of course both are to be observed, and no doubt about this whatsoever. So this is something that the reason why I'm mentioning this is we all have mothers. Whether the mother is alive or dead, the rights has to be observed. And also for those who are mothers, to appreciate this ni'mah from Allah, that this is the children should be righteous towards their parents in their lifetime and after their lifetime. But even if they're not, even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested someone by having a disobedient child or something like this, still the reward of being a mother and going through motherhood, this is such a rewardable act from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives so much rewards as a result of this. And one of which is when you see these ahadith that talks about the righteousness towards the parents, and the Jannah is underneath their foot, and especially the mother, and the rights of the mothers. This is all shows the great rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon the women if they become mothers. And as a result of that, again, it's to really focus on what's the priorities in our life. And since this is a dars for women, again, so this is the objectives. This is how we raise our daughters, that for them to be mothers, and that's why they would bring to them when they're young the ways to train them to be good mothers and things like this, and to oppose this the thing that is meant for them to take them away from this. To preserve our families and to preserve what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And that's why when the mothers used to be good mothers according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them, this is how the ummah changed. This is one of the means for the ummah to change, when the men and women are upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them, and when the women are being mothers and being wives and to observe that and to look away from what people are trying to deviate them. And Iblis, he has his work, as we said, and it's for men, he has his ways, for women, he has his ways. So therefore, to be aware of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us these examples at the time of the Prophet والسلام, and how they observed this and they understood that very well. And there's so many different narrations that when Abdullah ibn Zubayr, when he went to his mother Asma bint Abi Bakr, and she was old in age, and he was about to be killed, and he knew this, and he's going to his mother and he says that the people, they let me down, and choose the strength that they had in their hearts with matters of al-iman. And she gave him strength. She said, إن كنت تعلم أنك على حق تدعو إليه فامضي إليه. If you know that you're upon the truth, then go for it, go forward. And if you want the dunya, she says that to her son. If you want the dunya, إذا أردت الدنيا فبئس العبد أنت. What a worst human being you are if you want the dunya. أهلكت نفسك ومن معك. You would ruin yourself and those who are with you. Right? So she gave him strength. But the point is, this is their mother. This is the type of mothers that we need to have in our lives, in our communities, in the ummah. The mothers that would raise their children to put forward the hereafter. They have the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the iman in their hearts. The hearts are the strongest thing because they rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. They seek the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. She installed into their hearts that the hereafter is much more important for them than this worldly life. They take the means in this worldly life, but Salatul Fajr is more important than anything else in this life. Is more important than work, is more important than job, than money, than anything. And it doesn't mean that they will become lazy, but this is what's the most important thing in their life. The 5 daily salah, the obedience of Allah, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Even when he told her that if they kill me, they would skin me like a goat is skinned. He did not say skin me, but they said that they yumathilu bi. That means they would humiliate me after they kill me, or not honor the body after it's dead. So she said to him, Ya bunay, inna ash-shaa la yadurruha as-salkh ba'da adh-dhabh. She said to him, oh my son, the goat or the sheep, it does not harm it if it's skinned after it's been slaughtered. If it's slaughtered, that means it's dead. So it doesn't matter whether it's skinned or not. So do not let these things makes you weak. Be upon the truth, be upon the haqq. So it's amazing how, and this is Asma bint Abi Bakr, radiallahu anhum, and it shows how the strength of al-iman, and how the Prophet ﷺ raised them, and they followed the way the Prophet ﷺ to have that strength in being the position or in the position of a mother, and how she would give strength to her son in such a difficult fitna to have the heart steadfast upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is, and we talked about before the different examples, one of which is Juwayriyah bint Asma, that there was 3, those who they were martyred in one of the battles. So the woman, the mother, she went out to the market to get something. So this was in Testor, and so they went to the battlefield, and she has no idea of what happened to them. So when she went out to the market one day, and she saw someone that he might have news about what happened to her sons, and she received the news that they all were martyred. So her question was, muqbilina aw mudbirin? When they were martyred, whether they were going forward or they were fleeing away from the battlefield. They said, so he said muqbilin, they were going forward, they were not cowards and running away. So she said, Alhamdulillah, nalul fawz. So praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are victorious. And this is then brought happiness to her. And it doesn't mean that these individuals, they were not normal human beings, but the level of al-iman in their hearts, the level of faith in their hearts made the concern is the concern of the hereafter. And they raise their children to be upon this strength in their hearts to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So that's why to know the virtue of being a mother, to focus on this, to focus on raising the children. And we are weak since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these hearts of these children is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we only take the means and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep them firm in steadfastness. But we raise our children the way that we are upon. So it's not raising the children by giving lectures to them, by saying to them things, but rather how we are towards them. How do we act and how do we say and how do we do things and conduct ourselves? And they're watching and they're seeing that in their households, in their life. The strength of al-Iman in the hearts, that nothing is more important than the deen of Allah. When they come with situations, if they need to be to forgive them, they forgive. If they need to be strong in matters of the deen, do not if someone make mockery of them because of the deen, be strong, you are upon the truth. To give them that strength, to give them the izzah of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that to be honored to be a Muslim, to be honored to be obedient to Allah. When it's time for the salah, they make the salah. And then not worried about what people would say about them or this or that. The salah is most important thing to them. And this is a test to each and every one of us. What's more important in their life? If it's not the salah, if it's not the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that means we fail in raising them. And this is amana, this is a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us. So it's not a very difficult task, or a person has to study psychology or any of these types of things. Of course, mashallah, this is good, it's not to belittle anything. But it's when the mother is strong, when the father is strong, when they're obedient to Allah, when the deen is the most important thing in their life, and the household is upon this, there's no sins in it, no openly committed sins. When they would see the relationships, when there is a invited to a wedding, for example, they see that the izzah and the honor and the dignity in the deen of Islam takes over. We're not going to commit sins to please these relatives or these friends or whatever there is. The deen of Islam is our life, is our flesh and blood, is everything that we have in this life is the deen of Allah, is to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. And they see that and they hear that, and this is how, and then with the dua asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, this is how things change. So to understand that and to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to witness the time that we're in and how we are in need of that strength that we need to be upon for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum, the women in the life of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and how they were strong when it comes to giving that strength. Khadija radiallahu anha and what she did to the Prophet ﷺ, being a wife, and we talked about that before. But the mothers towards their children, and al-Khansa, how the deen of Islam changed her. So before she was a Muslim, in the times of Jahiliyyah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved, she was a poet. And she wrote poetry when her brother died, Sakhr. And this poetry, we even study it and memorize it when we're going through the school studying Arabic, because it's part of Shi'rul Jahiliyyah, part of the poetry of the times of ignorance, which is basically the sources of the language. And she wrote amazing lines of poetry to mourn for the loss of her brother, and that she would lose her life. The only thing that keeps her alive is the fact that there are so many women around her mourning and weeping and the like of this. But then when she became a Muslimah, and then she had 4 sons that died in the battle of Al-Qadisiyah. And before they went to the battle of Al-Qadisiyah, she instructed them. And she said that, she raised them. And she, they are coming from an honorable family and this and that, and they are Muslims. So to make her proud of them by making the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. And when the news came to her that the 4 of them, they were martyred, she said, Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that honored me, that I gave 4 of my children to be martyrs for the sake of Allah. How the deen of Islam changed her. And we have both situations saved for us to see how the changes from one state to the other, and how that she raised her children to be in that state. So again, to understand the role of motherhood and how to be a mother for the sake of Allah, because it's mentioned in the wahi from Allah, and to be sincere and to have a strong heart that the most important thing is the deen of Islam, and to install that in the hearts of our children by the will of Allah, because the hearts are by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the most important thing in our life is the deen of Allah. طيب, we'll stop here inshallah because it's time, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us, and inshallah ta'ala we'll continue next time inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وجزاكم الله خيرا.